You're standing in the dark, and your hand is resting flat against the wall, and the wall is wrong. It isn't smooth the way flowing water leaves stone. It's grooved. Four long parallel lines, gouge deep into the rock, running away from you into a blackness you can't see the end of. No human dug this. No river carved this. Something clawed its way through solid ground here, and the ceiling is high enough that you can stand up straight and never touch it. Here is what the modern survey shows, and it should not be possible. This tunnel, hidden in the forests of Brazil, was excavated by a living animal tens of thousands of years ago, and it is larger than any animal we have ever recovered bones for. The official explanation files it away under extinct giant sloths and moves on quickly. The measurements refuse to cooperate with that story. The more precisely you measure these tunnels, the less sense the accepted answer makes. There is a geologist named Heinrich Frank who has mapped more than 1,500 of these tunnels, and buried in his field data is a single figure he has openly admitted he cannot account for. I'm going to put that figure in your hands before this is over. And I want you to understand from the start that none of this is folklore or campfire legend. It sits in survey reports, in peer-reviewed papers, with coordinates you could drive to. I remember the first night I pulled up his photographs, a grown man crouched inside one of these passages, made small by it, and I physically leaned back from my screen because it looked staged, and it absolutely was not. Let me take you back to how this even surfaced, because the discovery itself is almost an accident. In the state of Rio Grande do Sul, in the far south of Brazil, Heinrich Frank was a geology professor at the Federal University there, driving past a construction site sometime around 2008. Workers had cut into a hillside, and in the exposed earth was a hole, not a small hole. A rounded opening, large enough to crawl inside, and Frank being a geologist, he assumed it was some ordinary feature, a collapsed lava tube, a dissolved pocket in the rock, a channel left by underground water. Those are the boring answers. Those are the answers I expected too when I started pulling his work apart, because that is what the earth normally does. Nature makes tunnels all the time, but he went inside. And what he found on the walls did not belong to any geological process he had ever studied. Long grooves, running in sets. 2, 3, sometimes 4 lines side by side, spaced evenly apart, curving along the walls and across the ceiling. They were the exact spacing you would get if something with a paw and rigid claws had dragged those claws through the earth while it was digging. He said something later that stopped me cold when I read it. He said that in all his years and in all the scientific literature he could find, he had never encountered a geological process anywhere in the world that produces a long tunnel with a rounded cross-section that branches, that rises and falls, and that has claw marks lining the walls. Geology does not leave claw marks. Only a living thing does that. So that is the first piece that clicks into place, and it is unsettling on its own. These are not caves. The proper term is paleoburrow, an ancient burrow, a den dug by an animal, then abandoned, then filled or preserved over unimaginable stretches of time. Frank realized that what he had wandered into was not a rare freak of one hillside. Once he knew what to look for, he started finding them everywhere. But the moment you accept that an animal dug these, a far larger and much more disturbing question opens up beneath your feet. Because if an animal dug this, you have to ask what kind of animal digs a tunnel that a human being can walk through standing up. Let me give you the numbers, because this is where the unease turns into something colder. In Rio Grande do Sul alone, Frank and his colleagues cataloged more than 1,500 of these paleoburrows. In the neighboring state of Santa Catarina, hundreds more. And these are not all little animal dens. The largest single tunnel system they documented, near the town of Timbó in Santa Catarina, runs for roughly 600 meters of connected passages when you add up all its branches. Let that sit for a second. 600 meters. That is longer than 6 football fields laid end to end, carved through solid earth and rock by paw and claw. The main tunnels in that system stand around 2 meters tall. That is taller than most men. They run wide enough for 2 large people to crawl side by side, in places up to 1.5 meters across, sometimes wider. The walls are smooth and polished in stretches, the way a wall gets polished when a huge body has squeezed past it again and again over the years. And the ceiling is where the claw marks are clearest, because whatever dug this reached up above its own head and dragged its claws through the earth to bring it down. Now, hold the geological explanations against that one by one the way I did, because I wanted this to have a boring answer. A lava tube? The rock in that region is the wrong type, and lava tubes do not branch and rise and dip and reconnect the way these do, and lava certainly does not leave parallel claw grooves. Water erosion? Underground water leaves rounded, smooth, sediment-lined channels that follow the pull of gravity downhill. It does not climb back uphill. It does not maintain a consistent tunnel height for hundreds of meters, and it does not carve grooves in neat parallel sets at the exact width of an animal's paw. Every natural process I lined up failed on the same detail: the claw marks. You cannot get around the claw marks. Something alive made these, and it made them on purpose. So, we've resolved one thing: these are dug, not natural. But that only sharpens the real problem, and the real problem is the animal itself. The mainstream answer, the one you'll find repeated in every short article that even bothers to mention these tunnels, is that they were dug by giant ground sloths and giant armadillos that lived during the last ice age, before roughly 10,000 years ago. And on the surface, that fits beautifully. South America during the Pleistocene was home to some genuinely enormous, burrowing creatures. There was Glossotherium and Lestodon, giant ground sloths that could weigh well over a ton, with long curved claws built for digging. There was Pampatherium, a giant armadillo relative the size of a small car. These animals were real, their fossils are real, and giant armadillos alive today do dig burrows. So the logic goes, big animal, big claws, big burrow. Case closed. Textbook answer. Everyone moves on. I want to speak directly to you right now. If you are the person sitting there thinking, this is obvious, it was a giant sloth, why is he making a mystery out of nothing? I thought exactly that. I spent weeks trying to make the sloth explanation work cleanly because I did not want to be the guy chasing ghosts through a tunnel in Brazil. So stay with me for the next few minutes because this section is built specifically for the skeptic in you, and it is the part that broke my confidence in the tidy answer. Here is the first crack. The smaller burrows, the ones roughly 1 meter or less across, match a giant armadillo reasonably well. Fine. But the biggest tunnels, the 2-meter tall passages, are attributed to giant ground sloths. And when researchers actually compared the dimensions of the largest burrows to the estimated body size of the largest sloths we have fossils for, the burrows came out too big. Not slightly, substantially. A tunnel 1.5 to 2 meters in diameter implies a digger considerably larger than the sloths whose bones we have actually pulled out of the ground in that region. The animal that the tunnel demands is bigger than the animal the fossil record offers. Frank himself noted the mismatch. The diameter of some of these burrows exceeds what the known candidate animals should have produced. Now here is the second crack, and this one bothered me more. Why would any animal dig a tunnel 600 meters long? Think about the effort. A ground sloth is not a mole. It is a massive, slow, heavy creature. Digging even a short den costs enormous energy. But 600 meters of interconnected tunnel, 2 meters tall through packed earth and weathered rock? Researchers tried to estimate the sheer volume of material that had to be excavated and hauled out to create the largest systems, and the figure runs into thousands of cubic meters of earth moved. Thousands. For a single burrow network, that is not a weekend project for one animal. That is a staggering, almost architectural undertaking, and no one has a clean explanation for why an Ice Age mammal would ever need something on that scale. And here is the third crack, the one that made me stop treating this as settled. Predator protection doesn't work as an answer, because a fully grown giant ground sloth had almost no predators. It was one of the largest land animals in its entire ecosystem. So what exactly was a 4,000-pound animal with scimitar claws hiding from underground? Temperature regulation doesn't fully work either, because you don't need 600 meters of branching tunnel to stay cool. A short den does that job. Every functional reason we invent for why the burrow exists explains a small hole. Feel that itch right now, the one that says the official label is too small for the hole in the ground you just walked through. That itch is exactly what the Lost Origins Complete Library was built for. It's 3 digital volumes you can read on any phone, tablet, or computer. No special app needed. First Threshold shows you how AI-driven LiDAR is uncovering ruins invisible for 10,000 years and walks you through the anatomy of a real archaeological controversy. Deep Signal hands you something better than another mystery. It teaches you the grammar of evidence, how to read a contested finding like these tunnels without being fooled. And Hidden Systems ties archaeology, ecology, and cryptozoology into one method for spotting exactly this kind of gap between the label and the data. Here's a test you can run for free tonight. Pull up Heinrich Frank's own field photographs of a grown man crouched inside one of these Brazilian paleoburrows and hold his measurements against the sloth explanation yourself, The official story left out the evidence, and you can watch it not fit with your own eyes. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. Now, back to the tunnels, because every reason we invent still comes up short. None of them explains a cathedral. The scale of these tunnels is wildly out of proportion to any need we can identify for the animals we're crediting with making them. So this is where the official story quietly stops adding up. It's not that the sloth answer is impossible. It's that the sloth answer is offered as if it closes the case, when in reality it leaves the three biggest questions, the size, the length, and the purpose, completely open. And I started to notice something about how these tunnels have been treated. For all that Frank found more than 1,500 of them, for all that they are among the strangest structures on the South American continent, the wider scientific world has largely shrugged. There is no major institutional effort to systematically excavate them, date them precisely, and settle what made them. They were quietly slotted into the extinct megafauna category and set aside as though a label were the same thing as an explanation. And that is where I want to widen the lens. Because these tunnels are not only in the temperate south of Brazil, reports and surveys have documented paleoburrows spread across an astonishing range of the country up through the interior, into warmer forested regions, into the states bordering the vast Amazon basin like Rondônia. When you plot the confirmed and reported locations, you are not looking at a local quirk of one construction site outside one town. You are looking at a continent-wide phenomenon, hundreds upon hundreds of hand-carved tunnels threaded beneath the ground across Brazil, most of them never studied in any depth, many of them known only to the farmers and workers who stumbled into them. The jungle has been sitting on top of this the entire time, and almost no one was looking. Think about what that means for the animals. If the burrows range from the cool south all the way toward the tropical north, then either these giant diggers occupied nearly the whole continent, or more than one kind of creature was making them, or, and this is the possibility that kept me up, we do not actually understand the full range of what was doing the digging. Because the further north you go, the thinner the fossil evidence for the specific giant sloths usually credited with the largest tunnels becomes. You have the tunnels without a confident match for the tunnel maker. The hole is there. The animal that fits it is missing. Let me pull one more thread before I hand you the piece I promised, because it matters. When people finally started going deep inside the largest of these systems, they reported something that the dry papers understate. Frank described the feeling directly. He said that in some of these tunnels, you get the sensation that there is a creature waiting for you just around the next bend. And that is not a scientist being dramatic. It is what the architecture does to you. The tunnels turn. They rise and fall. They branch into rooms and dead ends. Some of the larger networks have chambers wide enough to turn a large body around, connected by narrower runs. They feel deliberate. They feel lived in. And crucially, in a great many of these burrows, no bones were found inside at all. The digger cleaned up after itself, or left, or was never buried there. You have the home. You do not have the tenant. The tunnel is a fingerprint with no hand attached. So now, the number. The one I told you Heinrich Frank recorded and could not fully explain. It comes back to volume, to the raw, physical quantity of earth that had to be removed to create the biggest tunnel systems. When you calculate how much material one animal could realistically excavate and haul out in a single lifetime, and then you set it against the thousands of cubic meters of earth these largest networks represent, the arithmetic does not fit inside one animal's life. It does not fit inside two. The scale of the excavation implies that these tunnels were not dug by a lone creature in a burst of effort. They were extended, reused, and enlarged across generations, dug, occupied, abandoned, reoccupied, and dug deeper, over spans of time far longer than any single Ice Age mammal ever lived. Sit with that, because it changes everything. It means these are not simply burrows. They are inherited structures, passed down. A tunnel started by one generation of animals and expanded by the next and the next. The same underground network reworked over what may be centuries. That behavior, multi-generational construction of a shared, growing structure is something we associate with only a tiny handful of creatures on Earth, and none of them are giant sloths. That is the behavior of the most sophisticated animal engineers alive. And here it is, encoded in the walls of a tunnel in the Brazilian earth, carved by something we've decided we already understand and can't actually name with confidence. This is the detail the tidy summaries leave out. And it's the one that was, in effect, buried twice, once under the soil for tens of thousands of years, and again under a scientific label that made everyone feel the question was answered. It survived because one geologist refused to drive past a hole in a hillside. Heinrich Frank could have assumed it was a lava tube like everyone before him and kept driving. Instead, he crawled in, saw the claw marks, and spent years of his life mapping over 1,500 of these across southern Brazil, publishing the coordinates, the dimensions, the grooves, the volumes, preserving the evidence that lets you and me stand here now and see the contradiction with our own eyes. The record exists because he made it exist, and now it's in your hands. So let me lay out plainly what the reanalysis actually leaves us with, because I want you to feel exactly where we stand. We have hundreds, likely thousands of tunnels carved by living animals into the ground across an entire continent. The largest of them are big enough to walk through, run for 600 meters, and required the removal of thousands of cubic meters of earth. The claw marks prove they were dug, not formed. The scale exceeds the body size of the largest diggers we have bones for. The length exceeds any survival need we can name. The volume exceeds what one animal could dig in a lifetime, pointing to generations of inherited construction. And most of them have never been properly excavated, dated, or explained. They were labeled and set aside. Every single one of those facts is documented, and every single one of them makes the comfortable answer smaller and the mystery larger. I went into this certain I'd find the boring explanation, the one that lets you close the file and sleep. I found the opposite. I found a set of structures that the official story can name, but cannot actually account for, sitting under the forest floor of an entire country, hand dug by something that was either far larger than we admit, far more numerous than we mapped, or far stranger in its behavior than a slow Ice Age sloth has any right to be. The tunnel in the thumbnail is real. You could stand in it. And when you put your hand on that wall and feel those 4 parallel grooves, you are touching the work of an animal that reached up over its own head, dragged its claws through the earth, and built something we still cannot fully explain. What you just recovered isn't a fact you can look up in a textbook. It's the quiet realization that extinct giant sloth was a label somebody stuck on a mystery so the rest of us would stop asking. And you're not the kind of person who stops asking. You're the kind who feels the itch when an answer is too smooth, who leans back from the screen like I did and thinks, no, that doesn't fit, show me the measurements. That instinct is the whole reason you made it to the end of this. So I want to hear from you. Of everything here, the thing I still can't shake is the volume. The fact that the biggest of these tunnels holds more excavated earth than one animal could move in a lifetime, which means generations of creatures kept returning to the same tunnel and digging it deeper. What do you think that behavior really means? Do you buy the giant sloth? Or do you think something we haven't named was doing the digging? Tell me in the comments and tell me where in the world you're watching from, because I read them and the sharpest theories I've ever gotten have come from people just like you. If you've ever suspected that the official version of a story was the version designed to make you look away, then you already belong here with the rest of us who keep reopening the cases everyone else swears are closed. Stay close, because the next tunnel I've been mapping doesn't lead into the earth, it leads straight down under the ocean, to a structure whose walls are cut at an angle no natural current should ever be able to make. Before you go, remember that one figure Heinrich Frank couldn't explain? Inside the Unexplained Society, I walk you through it, right where this video stopped. You can ask me your own questions and I answer you myself, a real person, never a machine. You'd belong among mystery lovers just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. And you can cancel anytime. Come join me. Now, if that tunnel left you wondering, wait until you see what they uncovered in a Chinese desert. It quietly breaks everything we thought we knew about our own history. It's starting right here,